Namaskar and thank you for joining us now on the Economic Brief, our weekly program on news related to the economy from an Indian perspective of the world. On the show this week, India becomes the fourth largest economy in the world in nominal GDP terms, surpassing Japan. What's the trajectory pointing to? Political instability is causing Bangladesh's economy to slide faster than expected. Some predict an imminent collapse. Prime Minister Modi declares India's northeast as Ashtalakshmi, the 8 manifestations of Goddess Lakshmi of India, and $47 billion are bound that way after the Rising Northeast Summit. The US President Donald Trump's tariff plans, they face more judicial scrutiny, while his big beautiful spending bill has found Elon Musk quitting the administration. Before we move on, here's Prime Minister Narendra Modi speaking about the fact that Sikkim is a complete package as far as tourism potential is concerned. Now, Sikkim is one of the 8 states of the Northeast.
सिक्किम सिर्फ हिल स्टेशन नहीं, ग्लोबल टूरिज्म डेस्टिनेशन बने। सिक्किम के सामर्थ्य का कोई मुकाबला ही नहीं है। सिक्किम टूरिज्म का कंप्लीट पैकेज है। यहां प्रकृति भी है, अध्यात्म भी है, यहां झीलें हैं, झरने हैं, पहाड़ है और शांति की छाया में बसे बौद्ध मठ भी है। कंचनजंगा नेशनल पार्क, यूनेस्को वर्ल्ड हेरिटेज साइट, सिक्किम की इस धरोहर पर सिर्फ भारत नहीं, पूरी दुनिया को गर्व है।
Well, now let's take a look at India as the 4th largest economy in the world. Coming up behind me are a few slides that will show us how this has happened. This is IMF data that is showing that India is overtaken Japan. India is the world's 4th largest economy. Currently, India's value is at about 4.19 trillion US dollars, and that's based on current prices. So India and Japan are more or less at the same level in terms of the size, but India, of course, is growing faster and is seen as a larger economy. Moving on to our next slide, we can see that let's look at the top 5 economies of the world. This is in terms of nominal GDP. The US is the number 1 economy at 30.51 trillion US dollars. China follows it with $19.23 trillion. Germany is at $4.74 trillion. India is at $4.19 trillion. Japan too is at about $4.19 trillion. But if we look at PPP, which is purchasing power parity, then China is at $39 trillion, actually the largest economy in the world. And then India is number 3 at $17 trillion in PPP. So India has targets now. Of course, India in this year itself is expected to reach $4.28 trillion this fiscal, so taking it ahead of Japan. And Japan is likely to contract slightly, in fact. You know, we have that concept of what's called Japanification, where Japan doesn't seem to be growing at all. So Japan is likely to contract slightly to about $4.18 trillion. And India aims, in fact, to overtake Germany by 2028. So Germany at currently is about $4.78 trillion. In fact, by 2030, India hopes to be a $7 trillion economy. So India, of course, is looking at maintaining a high growth momentum and reaching $7 trillion by 2030. We, of course, have the vision, the Prasar Bharati vision for 2047. We can see that India hopes to become a $30 trillion economy by then. For it to, of course, also achieve the developed country status, India needs to have high income status. Currently, India is actually in the middle income status, in fact, in the lower middle income status, just about reaching the middle income status, the upper middle income status. which is, about $4,500 to $13,000 in the upper middle income status. The high income status for per capita income would be 14,000 US dollars per capita and above. But if you look at purchasing power parity, India is already actually at about 12,000 US dollars purchasing power parity. So per capita income, India is hoping to reach about 18,000 to 20,000 US dollars. This is when, of course, we reach 2047. At that time, we hope to be a high income economy. And how is it going to work? It's going to happen because we're going to be expanding manufacturing, accelerating artificial intelligence, fintech, and smart city development. All this, as we know, are already in place. These things are happening. Investments are taking place in renewable energy. India is moving fast in this direction. Infrastructure growth, that multiplier effect, that all happening. High-speed rail, highways, and urban development is taking place rapidly. So later in the program, we're going to get you a story about the rough road that the US President Donald Trump is facing with his tariff policies. But here's President Trump explaining that his policies actually have set the ground for negotiations.
You mean because I reduced China from 145% that I set down to 100 and then down to another number, and I gave the European Union a 50% tax tariff, and they called up and they said, please, let's meet right now. Please, let's meet right now. And I said, okay, I'll give you till July 9. I actually asked them, I said, what's the date? Because they weren't willing to meet. And after I did what I did, they said, we'll meet anytime you want. And we have an end date of July 9th. You call that chickening out? 6 months ago, this country was stone cold dead. We had a dead country. We had a country people didn't think it was going to survive, and you ask a nasty question like that. It's called negotiation. You set a number.
Well, we are privileged to have with us the eminent economist, Professor Sachin Chaturvedi, who is the Vice Chancellor of Nalanda University. Thank you very much, Dr. Chaturvedi.
Thank you.
Now, the next milestone on the way, I was explaining it a bit, is going to be Germany. Currently, it's about $4.7 trillion. When should that happen, in your opinion?
I think we are fast on track, Mark, and probably what seems to be a great possibility is in terms of, as IMF has predicted, 27, 28 would be a crucial year for India to retain the position that we have earned just now by bypassing Japan. And I think it would help us stabilize this position, consolidate the position, and then I think we should think of crossing that. But more than that, Mark, right. I think it is important for us to bring in expansion of economy the way we have been thinking in terms of not just per capita income, but as Prime Minister has suggested, to make the process more inclusive.
Yes, Dr. Nilanjan Banik, who is joining us. He's an eminent economist who's joining us from Hyderabad. But, what is the next milestone overtaking Germany? Germany is at about $4.7 trillion currently. When should that happen, in your opinion?
It's going to happen by next year, because if you look into the growth rate and try to juxtapose that growth rate vis-a-vis Germany, we are going to reach that stage pretty soon. What is needed at this point of time? We have now become a big market. In terms of market size, we have become a big market. But what is needed at this point of time, how to increase per capita income. And for that, what is necessary is whether government of India, like what they are doing, to give more emphasis on the manufacturing sector so as to create more jobs. In that way, that is going to increase the per capita income, that what we are seeing right now.
Okay.
Because even if you look into terms of purchasing power parity, we are doing pretty well. So the next milestone, just to say, is how we can go from lower middle income to higher middle income economy. And of course, eventually graduate to a high income economy.
Dr. Banik, you mentioned purchasing power parity. Now, per capita, we are already about over $10,000 annually. And some would argue that purchasing power parity is a better gauge. It's a more realistic gauge of economic potential. So, I mean, by purchasing power parity, India's economy is already about $15 trillion and above. So, putting us already in the third position. What is the, the momentum that we can gain from this kind of an analysis?
Always it makes sense to kind of compare economy on the basis of purchasing power, because what purchasing power suggests, you are taking into account the cost of difference in living across various countries in the world. So for instance, if you're living in US with $1,000 of income, it is basically suggesting that in India, to live the same type of lifestyle, you may be requiring $200 of income, because the cost of non-tradables in the US, be it in terms of services, healthcare, education, these are non-tradable items. These are the
Yes.
items which we cannot trade, which are quite high. And that's actually put why the living standard, cost of living standard is so high in
Right.
US vis-a-vis
Sure.
India. So if you really want to do apple to apple comparison, I think it's more scientific to take into account
Right.
this purchasing power parity.
We have Dr. Sachin Chaturvedi with us as well, the Vice Chancellor of Nalanda University. Dr. Chaturvedi, the dollar value too has moved from about 72 rupees to 85 rupees over the last 5 years. So will the rupee be getting stronger, if our economy gains strength? Or what would you say? Because at the end of the day, we are judging our economy in the size of the US dollar. And obviously, if we put it in rupee terms, I mean, we think it's growing much faster.
Mark, if you see the currency trend over last 2 years, on an average, India's currency has performed consistently well. We have seen the stability and we have seen, in a way, predictability that last 2 years trends have shown. If you compare it with many other global currencies, you find that they have depreciated beyond the range that usually those currencies have followed. So India's foreign exchange management, the role that institutions have played in India to bring in a greater coherence in monetary and fiscal policy, I think has played an extremely important role. So the point that in days to come, as we go up the ladder, and the point that we discussed earlier in terms of how this stability and how this predictability in the trends in foreign exchange would determine both not only the pace at which economy is growing, but also the inclusive character of it. And that
Okay.
probably, for a size of India's population, we would have to bring in a far greater cohesive and inclusive approach. And that's where the economic growth and ranking of economy would matter.
Well, Bangladesh aims to transition to an upper middle income country by 2031, but the current political instability and unrest are sending the economy into a downward spiral. Bangladesh has historically shown economic resilience, but the current crisis is exacerbating financial risks, including pressure on foreign reserves, also credit rating downgrades, and disruptions in key industries like the garment industry. Let's take a look at this report. Bangladesh is battling both political turmoil and economic collapse as industry leaders warn that the worsening power and gas crisis threatens to shut down factories, trigger mass layoffs, and accelerate financial defaults.
And nobody is supporting what Mohammed Yunus is doing, because all that he has done, he has tried to ruin the relationship with India. He has tried to stop the trade with India. As a result, factories in Bangladesh are closing down. There is unemployment. There are high prices, because if you don't import from India, from wherever else you import, the prices are much higher.
Factory closures are rising amid severe gas and electricity shortages. Offshore drilling and coal extraction are deteriorating, fueling fears that half of all factories could shut down within months. With interest rates at 14 to 15%, businesses face financial ruin, while the country struggles under a mounting debt burden.
You see, we have to have the loan repayment. A big chunk of money goes away every year. And the economy is really suffering because the investment is also not coming.
The youth have taken it upon themselves to fill a political vacuum. The National Citizen Party, NCP, was officially launched on February 28, 2025, making history as Bangladesh's first student-led political party. It emerged from the Students Against Discrimination movement and the Jatiya Nagorik Committee, which played a key role in the July 2024 uprising.
রাজনৈতিক দল করেছি Since we have formed a political party, we do have aspirations for power. However, we will engage in pragmatic politics. We are aware of our limitations, but we have entered the field with a long term vision. Our goal is not just this election or the next 5 or 10 years, rather, our dream spans the next 50 to 100 years.
The National Citizen Party's Vision 2035 outlines a shift towards a green, high tech economy. Key proposals include a one stop digital investor center, zero tariffs on capital goods and high tech industries, and a 10-year tax holiday for strategic sectors like semiconductors, AI, and renewable energy. They aim to fully embrace Industry 4.0 through special economic zones dedicated to AI, IoT, software, and renewable energy.
They have decided to form a party, most welcome. I think all the political parties have welcomed them to form a political party. But I would like to caution them, don't form a king's party.
Regardless of leadership, Bangladesh faces a political vacuum and mounting economic challenges. Inflation nearing 10%, weakening exports, an energy crisis, and rising unemployment. The Taka's sharp depreciation is driving up import costs, adding pressure on an interim government struggling to restore confidence in the economy. The Economic Brief, DD India. Talking about our second topic, which is about Bangladesh's economy, going through a bit of a crisis at the current time. Dr. Chaturvedi, do you see Bangladesh falling into the Chinese debt trap?
This is very unfortunate situation, Mark, we are ending up with. We have seen how the free trade agreement of Maldives landed up Maldives in a situation where eventually the government had to work and Maldives themselves had to assert against the purchasing commitments that were done. We have seen what has happened in Sri Lanka, the assertion by Sri Lankan economy, by the central bank of Sri Lanka. We have seen they have salvaged the economy.
Yes.
Unfortunately, similar trend now is discernible in our own neighborhood, now in case of Bangladesh.
Indeed.
Countries after countries, indebtedness and inability to manage the fiscal crisis that these countries are going through. Unfortunately, if you see, Mark, exports are consistently declining in Bangladesh.
Indeed, indeed.
People have gone below poverty line. A large number of people have already jumped in across that line. And we are seeing that unrest is multiplying. So in this situation, consistent borrowing from China is going to create far greater problem for Bangladesh economy.
Indeed. Dr. Banik, can anything move forward in Bangladesh if what is seen as an interim arrangement seems to be looking like an indefinite arrangement there in Bangladesh because the interim government is not calling an election. And also the youth who were part of this movement to start with, they're also getting restless and they've entered politics, they've formed parties and all that. What do you think is likely to be the outcome of all this in terms of the economy?
What's happening in Bangladesh is, unfortunately, most of the productive assets are getting lost because if you see what is their major exports item, it's textile. Right. And most part of the intermediate inputs, be it cotton, be it yarn, actually goes from India to Bangladesh. Now, because what Mr. Yunus is trying to do, he is actually trying to take sides more with Pakistan and China, and in the process try to disrupt the supply chain which is happening between India and Bangladesh. What we see is in terms of the basic input items, be it cotton, be it yarn, also fruits, vegetables, all these items, they are now, we are seeing a supply chain disruption.
Thank you very much, both Dr. Banik and Dr. Chaturvedi. Thank you for joining us on the Economic Brief this week and helping us understand these topics. But the Rising Investors Summit, which 2025 took place in the Northeast, it marked a breakthrough in unlocking the Northeast's untapped potential. As India pursues a $30 trillion economy by 2047, the Northeast, in fact, is emerging as a crucial gateway for trade, connectivity, and investment, with major infrastructure projects advancing and the Act East policy initiatives expanding. The region is in fact undergoing a rapid transformation, solidifying its role also as India's strategic link to Southeast Asia and the ASEAN. Kumar Himanshu reports.
Northeastern India is a region known for its rich and diverse culture, history, and ecology. With its strategic location, natural resources, and distinctive topography, the eight northeastern states Assam, Arunachal Pradesh, Manipur, Meghalaya, Mizoram, Nagaland, Sikkim, and Tripura are often referred to as the country's gateway to Southeast Asia. The Rising Northeast Investors Summit 2025 held last week in New Delhi, highlighted Prime Minister Modi's determination to ensure that Guwahati, Agartala, Imphal, and Shillong become the Delhi, Mumbai, Bengaluru, and Hyderabad of the Northeast.
नॉर्थ ईस्ट में इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर रिवॉल्यूशन शुरू किया है। लंबे समय तक नॉर्थ ईस्ट अभाव में रहा, लेकिन अब नॉर्थ ईस्ट लैंड ऑफ अपॉर्चुनिटीज बन रहा है। हमने नॉर्थ ईस्ट में कनेक्टिविटी इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर पर लाखों करोड़ रुपए खर्च किए हैं। सिर्फ एक दशक में नॉर्थ ईस्ट में 11,000 किलोमीटर के नए हाईवे बनाए गए हैं।
The two-day Investors Summit drew an unprecedented investment proposal of over 4 lakh crore or $47 billion. Union Minister Jyotiraditya Scindia called it the beginning of a new chapter in the region's development. Industry leaders Mukesh Ambani, chairman of Reliance Industries, Gautam Adani, chairperson of Adani Group, and Anil Agrawal, chairman of Vedanta, collectively announced investments worth more than 1,55,000 crore rupees or $18.2 billion to explore opportunities in the region.
The Northeast is not just rising, but to my mind, it is roaring. I make 6 commitments to the chief ministers of Arunachal Pradesh, Assam, Manipur, Meghalaya, Mizoram, Nagaland, Sikkim, and Tripura. First, Reliance has invested up around rupees 30,000 crores in the region in the past 40 years. In the next 5 years, we will more than double our investments with our target at 75,000 crores.
India's Northeast is emerging as a key driver in its pursuit of a $30 trillion economy by 2047, serving as both a growth engine and a strategic corridor. Prime Minister Modi's vision, recognizing the 8 states as Ashtalakshmi, positioning them at the heart of India's regional and global ambitions. With trade between India and ASEAN set to grow from $125 billion to $200 billion over the next decade, the Act East policy finds a natural ally in the Northeast. Aman Kumar Himanshu for the Economic Brief, DD India.
In a major legal setback for the President of the United States and his trade policies, a U.S. court has blocked most of his sweeping tariffs, ruling that the use of emergency powers is unconstitutional. Meanwhile, Elon Musk has abruptly stepped down from the leadership of the Doge and from the Trump administration's and efficiency drive. Here's Diptanshu Kashyap with the details. We leave you with this report. Thank you for watching the Economic Brief. Namaskar.
A US federal court has blocked most of President Donald Trump's sweeping tariffs, ruling that his use of emergency powers to impose broad import duties was unconstitutional. The court emphasized that Congress holds exclusive authority to regulate trade and struck down the 10% baseline tariff and higher duties on countries like China and the European Union. The ruling followed lawsuits from states and small businesses arguing that tariffs threaten their survival. The court invalidated higher duties on imports from Canada, Mexico, China, and the European Union. Legal challenges came from 12 US states and 5 small businesses impacted by the tariffs. Trump justified the tariffs by declaring the US trade deficit a national emergency under the International Emergency Economic Powers Act. However, the court ruled this exceeded presidential authority, calling it unconstitutional. The White House appealed the decision, criticizing interference by unelected judges, while Trump's aides labeled the ruling a judicial coup. Analysts say this decision disrupts tariff plans and increases uncertainty but leaves some sector specific tariffs and paused China levies in place, with trade negotiations ongoing. In another setback for the Trump administration, Elon Musk resigned from leading the Department of Government Efficiency after roughly 130 days. His tenure saw nearly 260,000 federal job cuts, though many reductions were temporarily blocked by courts. Musk's public criticism of Trump's recent tax and spending bill reportedly hastened his departure. Tesla faced 13% sales drops in first quarter of 2025 and a 10% stock decline amid protests targeting the company. Musk plans to scale back political spending and refocus on his businesses, highlighting the difficulties private leaders encounter in government reform amid political and legal challenges. Diptanshu Kashyap's report for the Economic Brief, DD India.